Awesome. We're live. Um, Dean, I never want to interview anybody who isn't busy because it means they're not doing anything.
Yes,
You've had a busy day,
absolutely.
and this isn't the first interview you've done.
Yeah.
And the problem
No,
is,
well, it was actually me conducting.
sorry.
It was actually me conducting the interview today.
I see. Okay.
I was actually conducting the interview today.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
And the problem is, of course, that now that, kind of we're less locked down than before, there is traffic in town, isn't there?
Yeah.
And so
Heavy
you
traffic.
came across some traffic.
A gridlock of traffic. And I had all my equipment with me as well. So
Okay.
I was filming today. So I've got 3 cameras, tripods.
And all of that. Okay. Well, look, let's get straight to this. We're now live on Facebook, and I'm going to get ahead with the show. Now, in recent times, it's become increasingly clear that there is a vacuum in Black leadership in the UK. After the murder of George Floyd and the worldwide spread of the Black Lives Matter movement, Black folk across the diaspora in the UK started to ask, what next? After the demos, the discussion and action on public monuments, what were we going to do to further our cause in the United Kingdom? So last week, I looked at the suggestion from Ekanam Robertson that it is time for a Black Manifesto. But what should it be, and how can it be created? So today, I'm speaking with Dean Okai, an inspirational businessman who has, over the past few years, been setting up ADPAC. That's the African Diaspora Public Affairs Committee. It is an umbrella organization that aims to coordinate the delivery of grassroots services for the British African diaspora and to promote its social and economic and political growth. So I'm asking Dean what the Black Manifesto should be for the UK. And first of all, Dean, where are we? Oh, we've dropped out. Dean, can you come back? We've dropped out. He's going to come back in very soon. It's not our day, Dean. Can you dial back in?
Everything is working with
Well, it must mean that this is a very important broadcast that's going to mean something special. Hang on, let me send you another link. Okay, where are we? Just a moment. Dean, check your WhatsApp and click on that link. Can you see that? And go through the same process as before to log back in. And I'm seeing you now. And I'm going to go to bring you back into the studio. And you're here. Okay, terrific. Well, after that introduction, Dean, I'm going to ask you straight away. What is ADPAC? What is its structure? And how is it governed? Let's start off, first of all, with the goals of ADPAC. Very briefly. Good.
So the goal of ADPAC, to put it succinctly, is to make African diasporan people a protected group in the United Kingdom. That's where we want to start.
What do you mean? What do you mean by a protected group?
People that everybody whispers about. So we can agree that the Ashkenazi community are a protected group of their own volition. All power is self-appointed, bar none. Now, the LGBTQ plus community, through Stonewall, made themselves a protected group by bringing together their greatest minds, by collaborating with all of those who were in institutions of power, by working with those who were in the press, because they suffered a common fate. So they made themselves a protected group by collaboration. Now, they needed a vehicle to do that. Stonewall became that vehicle. The Yiddishes did that in a much earlier time. And that is the only way to establish yourself as a protected group. You don't do it by begging your adversaries or those who've traditionally been able to utilize your labor, intellectual capital, and your human resource. You do it by organizing amongst yourselves based on the fact that you suffer a common fate, potentially. So irrespective of your background, your education, you could be pulled over by police, you could be assaulted by police, you can receive racial...
You mean as people of African origin, as black people in the UK?
Absolutely, yeah. So the only way to circumvent this is by organization and creating superior organizational structures that serve 3 million of us in the UK, because we can't escape it as individuals. We're still isolated into silos. Okay, so based on that fact,
yes,
yeah,
go ahead.
The only way to circumvent it is to organize en masse.
Okay.
First,
so hang on, wait, Dean. Now, first of all, I want the listeners to get a sense of what you mean by this protected group. So when you say a protected group, you're saying it's basically a group which has sufficient protections by its status, by its recognition in society, and by its institutions, such that whoever it is, whether it's a judge, a policeman, an employer, a teacher, any other public servant, will think twice about your rights before they abuse your rights. Is that about right?
Absolutely.
Terrific. So, now, hang on. What
please.
is the structure of ADPAC?
So it's a democratic organization with a chair who, for the first 12 months, is installed, as are the treasurer, as are the secretary, and all of the regional chairs. So regional chairs are in each of the London boroughs where we have stronghold. So Croydon, Lambeth, Southwark, Lewisham, Hackney, Haringey, and so forth.
Okay. Then, now, hang on. When you say regional structure, is this London-based only, or is this national?
You cut me just before I was about to mention Manchester, Birmingham, Luton, the West Midlands, and these territories. So obviously, as a new organization, the first 12 months they're installed. Then at the AGM, it comes down to a vote for each of those positions, if they've been well served. And this is amongst the democratic membership who subscribe at £5 a month.
Okay. So the officers of ADPAC will be voted by the members of ADPAC who pay a membership fee, basically, for the benefits they get as members of ADPAC. Okay. Now, how do the officers of ADPAC, I mean, if you like, the organizing committee, how are they held to account by the members who pay fees?
So we have monthly meetings, and me and Iola did some experiment with this with the Thursday Club. We started this just to serve.
Who is Iola? I know her personally, but other people don't.
Yes.
Yes.
So me and my good lady had an event called the Thursday Club, which was a tester. So we had subjects such as education, politics, Black love, spirituality, all of those things that will concern our community. And we had up to 200 people come down and pay £7 at the door. So we realized that there was a need for people to congregate physically, to have discussions, to network within the community. And that just gave us an idea of exactly the kind of meetings that we need to have monthly as a community, where you can start to form a semblance of community cohesion.
Okay. Tell me, how long did you hold the Thursday clubs, and whereabouts were they held, and what was the average attendance of these at these clubs?
So we held the Thursday Club in Brixton for 6 months, and we held it in Tottenham for 6 months. So it was an average attendance of, let's say, 150 people. So let's say between 100 and 200 people. And who paid? So we knew there was a particular caliber of person willing to make the financial commitment, which was merely an investment in themselves based on the information they were going to gain from the meetings, and also the networking within the room. So we saw that it was feasible. And when you look at that in a national model, and you think about the surgeries that MPs hold, you realize that we just need effective leadership conveying messages that are going to serve the membership and is worthwhile because they actually get something out of it. So the think tank, which we originally started with, which was the Solution Room, consistently getting great thinkers around the table to talk about building structures. Then a talking shop only goes so far, and you realize we actually need an institution that serves 3 million people of African origin in the United Kingdom. Now, I couldn't take up the mantle. We have a history of so-called charismatic leaders that are easy to attack, and you become a figurehead. We don't need any more avatars. What we need is an institution. So what I wanted to structure was a democratic organization with an effective leadership that would come and go, but the institution would remain.
And hopefully grow stronger over the years.
Absolutely. So if we think about the Conservative Party, if Boris actually had COVID-19 and were to have transitioned, the Conservative Party would have gone ahead with all of its mechanisms without skipping a beat. And Boris would have been a brief footnote in history.
Point taken. Point very well made. Brings me on to my next question. Where are our people of talent? The reason I ask this is something you'll probably understand. We know that we have more Black people in Parliament now than we've ever had before.
Absolutely.
We also know that for one reason or another, the average Black person in England doesn't really feel as if, wow, I've got an MP that I can talk to, get to advocate my causes, and so on and so forth. That's the first problem. Second problem is that whenever people are promoted into public office, you get the impression that they serve more the bidding of the masters who made the appointments than the constituencies that they're supposed to be working with. To the point that whenever you see a new Black face in a prominent public role, everybody thinks, who is he and where did he come from? Apparently, nobody knows who they are. And yet, if you go to any country in which Black people actually run their own affairs, appointments to public office, to high office, to executive positions in leading organizations and so on and so forth. When these are made, everybody goes, oh yeah, no, sure, yeah, I can see that. And so, but you never get that connection here. So where do we find our people of talent?
So where I personally look is LinkedIn, where I have maybe 6,000 global connections of African origin. Mm-hmm. I similarly look around our community, and mm-hmm. every time I see somebody who's doing something exceptional, first thing I'll do is check LinkedIn. And invariably, I'm usually connected to that person. So then I'll message them and send them my number. And within the hour, we're having a conversation. When it comes to the system that we know and the parliamentary system, you've got to remember there's no river, such thing as a river, without banks. Those banks are there to guide and control the direction of the water, the current, the power. Now, some of us are under the naive misapprehension as to the fact we can change anything from the inside. This is what party bylaws are for. This is what legislation is for. It's to protect the status quo. It's only that most of us don't know what the status quo actually means. Is what it actually takes economically to uphold unremarkable Europeans to have a high standard of life. Now, if you think about England, you can be sitting at home and generate zero income per annum, be watching Jeremy Kyle on a 50-inch LED that you got credit from Bright House, and eat based on benefits. So that system isn't free to maintain. Somebody's got to pay for it. Now, this is why we are separated from our Africanness based on the resources in the continent, so that we're black over here. The magician guides you with the left hand and does the magic with the right hand. Don't look over there in dark lands of Africa. You're black. No, we're global Africans, but we're distracted by the hand. Now, everything that comes from our continent to feed the great unwashed, what it takes to keep unremarkable Europeans at a high standard of living, comes from us. Now, when we recognize that as the 3 million African diaspora here, we'll get very passionate about our interests. And then we will welcome our brightest and best in serving our interests. And some of us will pay that nominal figure of £5 a month for the privilege based on the structures that ADPAC provides.
Okay. So, I mean, you mentioned a couple of things which trigger me instantly. First of all, you're talking about the disconnection between diasporans resident in the UK and their countries of origin. Mm-hmm. Secondly, you mentioned implicitly that there is a mentality which has been fostered, which makes people seek to build their futures here, disconnected from their roots. How do you plan to facilitate that the connection of people to their roots, such that they can leverage an inherent power? I mean, the only reason anybody comes to Africa is to take something away. There must be something there to take away. Yeah. It's the only reason anyone who isn't African goes to Africa. So how can you connect Africans in the diaspora, say just here in the UK, mm-hmm. with their origins, so that they can, if you like, enable that pipeline in their own interests?
So I'm really glad that you've mentioned the pipeline, because every culture is obligated, every ethnicity is obligated to uphold, promote, and preserve their culture. So how we start that in immediately breaking the cycle is to introduce what we've called the schools to industry pipeline, where we've reverse engineered from industry through university, through schools, through rites of passage organizations, and then working with all of our grassroots youth engagement organizations to create a pipeline that will literally see you through school to industry. So we've just started an initiative called Manage Leadership, which is entrepreneurial and civic leadership. But I've also been in talks with the rites of passage organizations for the past 4 years.
Well, what are they? What do you call that?
Right. So if we put it in layman's terms, African rites of passage takes a boy and trains them how to be a man. Just like if you came from the Yiddish community, you would go through a transition where your bar mitzvah is your graduation, where you're introduced to your community. And then not only can they track you as talent, but they can make an investment in you. So you have Manhood Academy in West London, Origin HQ in South London, WYA in North London, and MAG in East London. Now, each of those rites of passage organizations train young ladies and young men, and also have parental classes based on values and ethics so that nothing is lost. Because what you can do is get to the point where you're doing a line of knitting and you return back to parents in the household and there aren't shared values because there may be a distraction where they're seen as babysitters. But no, those rites of passage organizations are creating a complete cohesion that protects and surrounds the entire family and is based on African values. And what it does is exposes young people to African professionals and makes them accessible.
Okay. See, Dean, what you said quite casually, you've obviously been working for many years on this, is actually incredibly profound, because we're talking about governance, maybe politics and economics, but none of that can happen without a shift in mentality.
Absolutely.
This shift in mentality doesn't grow in and of itself. It is nurtured. Hence your rites of passage organizations and so on and so forth. Because right now, the problem I see in Britain is that the pipeline we've got is from school to prison.
Absolutely.
And it seems to me that there's a fundamental shift in what you're wanting to do to redirect that pipeline into gainful employment and so on and so forth. Oh, let me ask you, what has been the response to ADPAC, to these ideas? First of all, from the diasporan communities here in the UK, and second of all, you must have encountered it now, from mainstream society. Well, what kind of feedback have you had?
Well, understanding that all power is self-appointed, I don't concern myself too much with what Europeans, Asians, Greeks, or anybody else is doing, because they're fine. If we're at the bottom of the socio-economic ladder, they're not my concern. So the reason I've extrapolated everybody else from my central consciousness process, and I merely deal with Africans so that we can create African solutions for African people, because everything else for me is verbiage and it's about showing my intellect rather than me practically putting an infrastructure and working with colleagues that serves us. So for instance, I don't go on to European broadcast platforms because it's a waste of time. All it would do is demonstrate what my perception of my intellect is, which is of zero value to me and zero value to my community. What we actually require are the solutions. So the reason that I go onto our platforms is because I want Africans who identify what we're working on to come towards us. You can go to adpac.net and find all of this information. Very easy to navigate, download every single PDF so that you have all the information. So the first thing, and I'll wrap this up very succinctly, I would love for us to stop talking about the big they, the omnipotous European that can see what you do in the dark with your wife or your husband. They don't exist. We become our own gatekeepers. We suffer psychologically based on the indoctrination that they give us, that they call an education, that we understand to be an indoctrination. And there is a formula that they teach us that we learn very well. Fear, obey, conform. Now, as we leave school, that evolves into fear, obey, consume, which is a great formula for control. Because initially, as that pill is introduced, then we become the greatest advocates for it. They won't let you do that. They won't allow it. There is no they. We become the they.
The they, as you're saying, is a concept which is implanted in your head. And after a while, you start to ideate the they, and actually police yourself in the interest of whatever the quote unquote they is. I like that very much. Now let's cut to the chase on this. What if you were to write a Black Manifesto, as many people are calling for now, what would be the 5 top items on your manifesto? We chatted a little bit before. We started with economics. Yes. What would you do? What would the economic manifesto be?
So it's right in front of me on my other laptop. When we start from a cultural position where we are aligned with a common denominator, it has to be around reparations, because it doesn't just unify the entire African diaspora here. It unifies the entire African diaspora globally. Now, we have the vehicle of the state of the African diaspora. ADPAC's role is to liaise with state of the African diaspora in the 6th region of the African Union directly. Our role is to facilitate our repertory courts and our repertory bank to receive the finances from reparations, so that we're no longer talking in intangibles. Now, who
decides how much the reparations should be, and how do you anticipate it's going to work?
There's only one thing that will make them give us reparations. Now, as much as I'm sure everybody would be waiting with bated breath and say, I'm sure he doesn't know, I'm not going to say it in the broadcast, because I'm sure you're aware that it would make me an unusual target. However, one of the things of ADPAC in our media division is that we are doing an audit of our global owned media so that we have effective communication globally. That is one of the assets that will bring about reparations. Anybody who is that curious can seek me out. I'm not a secret anywhere. I would share the entire formula, envisaging that they would be delivery partners within the ability to gain these reparations.
Okay, so you're looking for me to, so media partners ought to engage with ADPAC as well.
Absolutely.
Okay. I don't want to Sure.
I don't want to ability to propagate and inform our people globally.
Absolutely. Tell our own story. I don't want to go into that any further now, but I think that you've painted a picture. The second manifesto item you were talking about was actual political power. By political power, I mean the ability to pass laws or influence legislation in such a way that the quality of our lives are protected and hopefully enhanced. How do you deal with the politics problem?
So we've had a dearth of political representation, and don't look at any of the big 3 parties or even the big 4 and then the minor 5th, because they weren't created for our interests. And when we're looking at this politician, they have to be very diplomatic in not only their language, but their approach in which they serve, because they have paymasters. He who pays the piper calls the tune. So Lord Sainsbury's, for instance, donates £1 million and in his lobbying gets 10p per carrier bag, which has been made legislation because it's all about the ecosystem. It's not about the ecosystem. He wanted to get rid of one of his overheads. He contacted his colleagues. They lobby collectively. He put the money up, and then it became law. So now you pay 5p or 10p for a carrier bag. It's the law. He who pays the piper calls the tune.
Let me just clarify that before people get the wrong impression of what you said. It is a well-known feature of our political system that lobbyists speaking for private held interests are a huge influence on our democracy. And if I may, kind of give a broad brush example, I think that one of the industries which has got a particularly bad reputation for this is big pharma, in that there are many controversies and many differences of opinion about the way in which we consume drugs, prescribed drugs, and so on and so forth, and how indeed the law is created to support or protect the creation of drugs and their passing. That's just one example. For many years, the tobacco lobby was able to blindside, apparently, the public about the connection between tobacco and lung cancer. So what you're saying, in case people are thinking it's, kind of weird, bizarre, or some kind of conspiracy theory, this is a feature. This has been a feature of Western democracy for a very long time. Please continue.
Of course. First of all, let's dispel the myth that we live in a democracy. We live in a plutocracy. It's about the wealthy. And if you're not wealthy, you are just one of the great unwashed. You have no power in terms of representation. These issues aren't partisan politics. Partisan politics is for children. They are just two hands of the same body. Now, whenever you have a rebel who has come in to change the status quo, remember what that means, what it takes to keep unremarkable Europeans at a high standard of living. So we just had the leader of the Labour Party, who was anti-Semitic, who loved the IRA, who loved Palestinian terrorists, all of this demonization. But you see, when they can't character assassinate you, they might actually assassinate you. So let's cast our mind back to 1997. Tony Blair wasn't the Labour candidate, and Labour was a guaranteed shoo-in. The candidate who was the head of the Labour Party was John Smith, who suffered a heart attack just before the election. And Tony Blair was ushered in. Now, Tony Blair wasn't a traditional Labourite. He was a neoconservative who brought about new Labour. And when it came time to hold hands in a special relationship and play the game and commit the fraud in the association of Iraq with 9/11 or having weapons of mass destruction, how you do that when you've suffered a 14-year trade embargo is absolutely bizarre to me.
I have to hop in here.
Please, sir.
As to the matter of how John Smith came to his end, one has to be very careful. There are laws of libel, which
you can't lie, journalist. And I haven't mentioned any alphabet agency.
Okay, well that is no. Nobody's saying that you. Nobody is saying. Hang on, Dean. Nobody's saying that you have. But I want us to maintain this broadcast to a standard which will pass scrutiny wherever we go. This is what is important, because the cause that we pursue is actually quite important. But you're saying that if we can round off about the political end, what is the main thrust of your political manifesto item? The key point.
So ADPAC, as the political wing, is a super PAC with national capability to rally voters to block vote based on our interests. So we're doing that census right now, which is for eligible African origin voters by county and by borough, so that we have the intelligence to tell us how many of us are in each borough and eligible to vote, how many are in each county and eligible to vote. Now, we know there is a new party on the horizon. We take our time with everything. We do our due diligence. And when we understand that there are those that represent our interests, we back them so that we can gain the parity that we've always desired.
Okay, good. I'm going to move on to the issue of human rights and justice. That would have to be high on any kind of manifesto item. What do you have to say about that?
Absolutely. So two of our biggest initiatives are one, and these are around justice reform.
Right.
One is the ability to bring about a private prosecution whenever one of us is murdered and we don't believe that justice is being served, that is purely serving their interests, which don't align with our interests. And the other one is the ability to bring about a joint civil litigation against the government. So if you imagine the Windrush fiasco, which was perfectly designed by government and the civil service in terms of destroying records willfully, taking that evidence, we would merely go to our barrister, bring all of the plaintiffs and lodge a joint civil litigation against the government.
It's a class action.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But this takes funding, doesn't it?
Of course it does.
So we do have to build a culture of putting our hands in our pockets so that we have an allied barristers chambers who actually hold that retainer on escrow ready to go as and when we need them. Now, that would be for private prosecutions or joint civil litigations. We would also work with the pro bono solicitors who are out there in terms of justice reform and miscarriages of justice and get behind those campaigns, which is why it's very important that we are in contact with all of our owned media.
Very good. Okay. There's one other thing which is of particular interest to me, is the quality of education for our young people here in the UK. Personally, I had a private education all my life, and technically, it's a very good one. It costs a lot of money. However, an education can take you closer to yourself, or it can leave you very, very much estranged from yourself, especially given the state of our curricula here in the United Kingdom. Does ADPAC have anything to say about the quality of education that young diasporan kids receive?
Absolutely. We've stood behind Kay Johnston's. Now, Kay Johnston is an ex-head teacher who currently has her own school and has designed the Diamond Enterprise curriculum, which goes from nursery to industry, which is where I got the initial idea for the schools to industry pipeline, because then it is about manifesting it. And she said something very important when we shot some videos. It's about creating wraparound care for the African origin family. And our educational institutes shouldn't just be for children, but fully utilize buildings that where the parents receive some education, where we have supplementary schools on the Saturday, where we have rites of passage on the weekend, and it just becomes a holistic solution that our people need. So off the back of that, and the videos that we actually shot were for an initiative called Anansi Village Trust, where we would purchase commercial freeholds in trust to convert into schools, chambers of commerce, and cultural community centers. That trisector of buildings would give us a cultural cohesion within the community where we actually get to see each other, meet each other, and build the blocks that we see other cultures expressing their lives fully within the UK.
What do you call the curriculum? Was it the Diamond
Enterprise curriculum? And that was designed by Kay Johnston, which is a full and robust curriculum designed by a head teacher with 40 years experience.
Kay Johnston.
Kay Johnston, lovely lady, highly qualified, gives lectures on education globally.
Right. Okay. So the last thing I'm going to say is that these things aren't free. They cost money. Freedom costs. And what would you like to say about how to finance and fund all of this stuff? Because it's not going to happen for peanuts.
Absolutely. So for us, there are 3 bases of funding, which is subscription at £5 a month. We want to build very quickly into a robust organization where
we have target membership, Gene.
100,000. I was just getting to that, sir.
Okay.
So initially, we want to build to 100,000 so that we can raise 500,000 a month, which covers wages, the deposits on commercial freeholds, and also operations. We, outside of the subscription funding, we do have 2 bid writers on the team of ADPAC, where everywhere we are mentioned in terms of being targeted with funding, ADPAC will find itself within that room represented, whether it's across education, health, housing, trade and industry, irrespective of the area,
business grants, etc.,
are claiming to represent us. We will represent ourselves, and we will do the bidding who and where funds will be available from our community. Now, as we develop ourselves as a protected group, because we're not just going to go in a room and overnight say that, because we can put somebody in a room. We align our media, our departments, and our experts, and hopefully give our MPs some courage within the House, knowing that they have great support from outside of the House, true representation at every single mealtime that goes down in this nation, allegedly regarding us, because many European organizations have found themselves at the feeding table when the money has been ring-fenced, supposedly for the Black community. Now, Black being elective in this country, which is politically Black, is a huge problem for us because we have no sovereignty. So after the Asians in BAME have got their money, they become politically Black, and then they come for our piece of the pie. This goes for anybody who is a non-heterosexual European man. They can be politically Black.
Okay. Now, we pretty much come to the end of this, Dean, but I think it's only the start of the conversation. How do people engage with ADPAC? And after this broadcast, you will see a feed on Facebook. If you would go on there and post a link to ADPAC for people who want to find out more. What do you feel about the future?
Knowing who I know the future's bright. I was actually, the program that we have managed, we shot the first managed masterclass today with a gentleman who's a property developer who actually takes shares from the community to purchase commercial freeholds and convert them into HMOs and other such property investments. So he was talking about his problem solving skills in what he's established over the course of his life to get to this position, because it's a civic and entrepreneurial leadership course that trains our young men from 16 to 25 how to engage in not only entrepreneurial leadership, but civic leadership concurrently, because we all have a plan to become philanthropists when we've made it. Mañana, 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 more to lose. I don't want to rock the boat. It doesn't happen. But imagine if we created an alumni from the gate, 10 young men per alumni who are armed with the same code, the same information, superior information on relationships, the man-woman relationship, entrepreneurial pursuits, civic leadership and structures, how to work as a mastermind, superior stuff. So I'm so surrounded by these people. For me, it's bright. And I might seem like an alien, but I know who is out there building the machines. And my job for the past 4 years has just been to recruit these guys that we don't see. They're anomalies, which is possibly based on their spirit and the robustness.
Apparently, they don't exist. I mean, if
they're not supposed to exist.
If the media is to be believed, they don't exist, and
Absolutely.
They have to be discovered. Okay, Dean. Look, I can't thank you enough. I'm sorry for our woes at the start of the program, but this was an important conversation. Please, after the broadcast, if you could kindly post the information about ADPAC at the bottom of the stream on Facebook, and also share this conversation, that would be absolutely superb. It'll be available on my YouTube channel as well. Please like that, share that, and subscribe to it. Thank you so much for your time. You must have had a long day.
Thank you for the opportunity. And just to the viewers, you can reach us at adpac.net.
Superb. Dean, have a very good night.
Fantastic weekend. Thank you.
And we're out.